So this is week 6. We're halfway through the 12-week series of learning about mining. And this week we have Whit Gibbs, who's the CEO of Compass Mining, probably my favorite mining company in the space, other than Galaxy Digital. And he's going to give us an overview of the ASIC supply chain, both primary and secondary sourcing. Whit, I'm going to go off video. I'm going to go and myself here if you need me, but floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate the invite. And I think this series is awesome. As you just mentioned, education is definitely important in this space. With Compass and everything that we're doing to try to spread more actionable information to miners everywhere, that I think that this initiative that you have at Galaxy Digital, these summer courses, is fantastic. And all the talks so far have been great. Hope I can just live up to the hype and following in those big shoes to fill by everyone that's come before me. But today we are going to talk about the ASIC supply chain, primary and secondary sourcing, and we're going to go through this. And then, if we're open to Q&A at the end, Amanda, I'm totally open for that. I've got time set aside. But jumping right in.
Just one quick thing. We're going to do a Twitter Spaces for Q&A. This is just presentation only. Perfect. And the Twitter Spaces, we're going to have to change the time, unfortunately, because Whit and I are both at a mining conference in Miami where we're going to be like totally boggled down with talking to lots of people that are interested in mining. So we're going to change the Twitter Spaces. We'll tweet it out this week. Now I'm really going to not talk.
Great. Okay. Well, it's good we were able to fill that in. So a little bit about me. I, as Amanda mentioned, am the founder and co-founder and CEO of Compass Mining. Graduated from Florida State in 2007 with a focus on political science. And then prior to getting into crypto, I had many jobs as an entrepreneur trying to find my way in the business world, if you will. But two that really had a direct impact on me were with Alliant Payments. And while I was at Alliant, that was where I first heard about cryptocurrency. Alliant, some may be familiar, they were the company who got the Miami Dolphins to start accepting Litecoin. They were very big in the Litecoin space, and they've been at the forefront of helping traditional retail merchants start accepting cryptocurrency. So that was my first exposure. And then puppyspot.com, it taught me a lot about the buying experience that people prefer to have. And it also got me my first taste of startup life, which is exciting and scary and fun and all of these things. And, after leaving PuppySpot, that's when I got into Bitcoin. I bought my first Bitcoin in 2017, or I should say a fraction of a Bitcoin. And, from there, it was all there for me. I had, just left PuppySpot, had committed to figuring out how I could learn more about Bitcoin, learn more about the cryptocurrency space. Started in January buying the top, which was a very interesting experience. I know a lot of us have probably had that experience where you bought it 20 and then the price dumped, or you bought it 60 and then the price dumped. And there's a lot of learning that comes there. And for me, it's never really been about speculating on the price to amass wealth. I've always viewed Bitcoin as the greatest wealth transfer of my lifetime. I think that it truly will be. But I also see it as the future of finance. I see it as the future of payments. I do see it as potential store of value. I think that it's very different in how it's viewed by different people. And as I dove further and further down the rabbit hole with Bitcoin, for me, I just started to realize that there were so many opportunities to build businesses in this space. And I, being entrepreneurial, wanted to find what I could do to add the most value to people. And, that's really what led me to mining. When I built my first computer in Q2 of 2018 to mine Ravencoin, I realized that there were a ton of technical hurdles. It was very complex and complicated. And if you didn't know what you were doing, you were going to overspend and probably generate less revenue than you otherwise should have. So what I did is I started a podcast, and that podcast led me to interviewing some of the brightest minds in the space. And it was great because, they probably never would have talked to me if I didn't have a platform through which they could share their products, services, or their message. But it really allowed me to dive into everything that was going on in mining. And it ultimately led to the connection that I had with Thomas Heller, who is my co-founder at Compass Mining, along with Paul Gosker. But we started to just really kick around, why would we focus on mining? Like, why is mining the focus for me, for Compass? Why do we do what we do? And number one for us is that without mining, there's no Bitcoin. It's very integral for everything that Bitcoin stands for. We don't see a future where Bitcoin is going to go to POS. We know that there have been people that have mentioned that, but I think that's crazy. Mining will always be a part of Bitcoin as long as Bitcoin is in existence. And if you are bullish on Bitcoin, which I sure am, then you have to be bullish on mining as well. And when it comes to the industry, the mining industry, that space, the thing that really drew me into it quite quickly is how competitive it was, intensely competitive. You're always looking for an edge, whether it's firmware that allows you to increase the efficiency or the profitability of your machines, whether it's immersion cooling to allow you to run them harder for longer without bricking them or messing up your ASIC, or whether it's the manufacturers always looking to improve their chip design so that they can get these more efficient machines with higher hash rates. I was just fascinated by how competitive the landscape was and what that competition did to drive innovation in the space. Because ultimately, when you look at an area like Bitcoin mining, whenever there's intense competition like this, really the ones who benefit are the miners, because you have all of these service providers and companies that are looking to find ways to create edges. And once those are shared, or a company tries to monetize them, then all of the miners can benefit. Now, another thing that for us at Compass is very important is we want to democratize Bitcoin's hash rate by giving everyone the ability to mine Bitcoin. And that's something that we feel is very important. The way that Satoshi designed Bitcoin and the way the proof of work really works is that everyone does have the ability to secure the blockchain and create new Bitcoin. And for us, that's very important. And then from a business standpoint, picks and shovels over speculation is a very easy thing. When I look back at the gold rush in the 1840s, 1850s, you look at all of the companies that sprung up around that rush to amass wealth and that wealth transfer that occurred. And the companies that you really think of that are still in existence today, when you look back at the gold rush, are Wells Fargo and Levi's, right? They weren't the speculators who were trying to mine the gold and taking that risk. They were the people who were providing the support for the people who are out there in the fields mining gold at that time. So that's something for us as a company that was very important when we were focused on mining specifically. For us with Compass, we launched in October of 2020. We actually launched on the 12th. Bitcoin's parabolic rise started on the 16th. So the market did us all kinds of favors. But for us, we were so excited to be able to help everyone mine Bitcoin, because for a very long time, it was thought that you had to have a ton of money to get into Bitcoin mining. And I didn't. When we started Compass, we, as founders, we didn't have millions of dollars to set up self-mining operations. But we figured that there might be other people who were in the same boat, who didn't have a ton of capital, but really wanted to help support the blockchain, secure the network, mine Bitcoin for themselves. So when we launched Compass, that was our thought, is that there would be other people like us who wanted to buy ASICs for fair prices and host them at facilities around the world where they could mine Bitcoin profitably. And that was something that was very important. It's still to this day our battle cry. Everything that we do is always to help people get into mining and stay in mining. And the only way that you're ever going to stay in mining is if the experience is positive for you, and ultimately if you're generating the returns that you should be generating from mining. Now, with us, and the reason that I think Amanda has asked me to speak today, is the majority of Compass's revenue comes from the sourcing and reselling of ASICs. So we are always on a daily basis buying and selling ASICs, either from the manufacturers directly or from the distributors who are purchasing them. So primary and secondary sales right there. And that's really our bread and butter. We are a marketplace like many others that exist, and we are constantly trying to drive demand and supply to our site. The supply side is what we'll be talking about today. The hosting facilities will be left for another conversation, but really I want to dig into mining hardware and its importance in the mining space, because for us, it's integral. When you're looking at mining Bitcoin, if it's a self-mining operation, there's really 4 inputs that matter the most. 1 is your OpEx, your monthly operating expenses. 2 is your cost of hardware. 3 is your price of power, and 4 is the price of Bitcoin. Those 4 inputs will guide your profitability or lack of profitability to your operation. So when we're looking at supply at Compass, and these machines are going to be sold to people, whether it's retail or institutions or accredited investors, we're always looking at making sure the price point is spot on to allow for a proper break-even period so that they can return on that investment, which allows them to then scale and grow their operations. So ASICs. ASICs are application-specific integrated circuits. They are purpose-built machines that do one thing, and they do one thing very well. And that one thing in this case is mining. Now you have ASICs that can mine Bitcoin. You have ASICs that can mine altcoins. We are going to focus the conversation today on Bitcoin mining ASICs. Compass is a Bitcoin Bitcoin first company, so that is where we focus. But when it comes to these ASICs, I think that everyone has probably seen one that's put together. It looks like a silver shoebox. They're not, I would say they're not the most aesthetically pleasing thing in the world, but in this game where you're trying to get everything priced appropriately, the bells and the whistles are not needed. So the components that make up the ASICs are listed there, and you can see we've got one deconstructed. These machines, I must say, are they're a sight. So to have one, to see it, you can't believe the weight on one of them. The average ASIC weighs 14 kilograms. So it's a dense, heavy machine, and they're quite impressive. Those of you who are running ASICs or have ran an ASIC at home, you're also aware of the noise and the heat. They emit a ton of heat and they are very loud, which is why they have to be built in such a way, and the facilities have to be built in such a way to dissipate the heat to allow for a long and usable life for these ASICs. Now, what we've seen over the course of Bitcoin is, first, Bitcoin mining started with GPUs. So GPUs, just like you have in your PlayStation 5 or in your gaming computer, those were used to mine Bitcoin. And then the space evolved and FPGAs started to be used. Now, FPGAs are field programmable gate arrays. And these machines are basically, the easiest way to think of them is ASICs that can be repointed at different coins or different algorithms. So think of it as a hybrid between an ASIC and a GPU. And that's a 10,000 foot view of what an FPGA is. They're very technically advanced pieces of machinery. But after the FPGAs is when the ASICs came in. And when ASICs came in and started to gain wide adoption, it allowed for the industrialization of Bitcoin mining, because ASICs are generally plug and play. There's very little that you need to do with regards to tuning them or tweaking them or optimizing them. You have the ability to just get them into a facility, plug them in, and they will mine Bitcoin for you. And for the industrialization of the space, that's critical because it allows you to scale and deploy faster, which is very important when you're looking at something like that. Now, what we have seen between 2013 and 2019 is that we've had some efficiency flatlines in ASICs. So you have, as Moore's law would state, you have the increase in the efficiency of machines every 2 years or so. And generally speaking, you should see prices drop as the efficiency improves. But with Bitcoin mining ASICs, what we have noticed is that the rush to get the smallest nanometer chips over the past handful of years has really led us to this potential plateau that we're seeing, where you had 8 nanometer chips and then 7 nanometer chips. And now we have 5 nanometer chips that have been announced by Bitmain to be included in their S19J series. And when you think about the size of these, just to put things into perspective, 5 nanometers, if you take one strand of your hair, 5 nanometers is a fraction of the width of that one strand. So as we get smaller and smaller, you can understand just how technically advanced everything that goes into the building of these ASICs has to be. But also the understanding is that these chip fabricators, they constantly have to be investing in new infrastructure, buying new lasers, getting things set up to manufacture these smaller and smaller chips. And then the flip side of this is that these chip manufacturers are not just supplying Bitcoin miners, right? These chip manufacturers are manufacturing the chips that go in your Apple phone, they go in your Samsung refrigerator. Chips are now in everything. Smart devices are everywhere. So the space and the chip manufacturing process is becoming more competitive than it ever has been, because now there are so many different companies vying to purchase those chip wafers so that they can use in building their new technology. So Bitcoin miners are competing just like everyone else for these. And I think that we've all heard this, that we are lower on the totem pole than these other companies when it comes to sourcing chips. And that has been said to lead to this ASIC shortage that we have seen over the last year. We've heard it widely stated that there's a shortage of ASICs, there's a shortage of chips coming out of the fabricators. But in reality, we're now seeing an oversupply of ASICs due to the situations that are going on in China, which we'll talk about in a minute. But when it comes to China, I think the most important thing that we need to realize is that China controls the entire supply chain for the ASICs, the manufacturing. The chips are sourced from Taiwan or South Korea for the most part, but everything else, all of the components that go into these ASICs are sourced in China. So when we look at, and people talk about hardware manufacturing moving out of China and the ASICs, the manufacturing of ASICs moving out of China, there are a number of challenges with that just because every component that goes into building these is sourced in mainland China. And that really is able to keep the price low. If you were to take similar manufacturing and move it over to the States, we may see ASICs that are 50 to 60% higher price than they are right now, which would change the entire economic dynamic of Bitcoin mining overall. Now, manufacturing of ASICs is mostly done by a handful of credible manufacturers in China. The three top ASIC manufacturers right now for Bitcoin mining ASICs are Bitmain, MicroBT, and Canaan. Now, these three companies have released new versions for the last 2 years, but they perform quite differently. There are certainly build quality differences between each of the manufacturers, just like you would have build quality differences between Mercedes and Honda and Toyota. There are little nuances in the design that are different. And I think that what we're seeing is Bitmain and MicroBT are pulling further away from the pack because they've really focused on their build quality and the efficiency of their machines. Right now, the newest generation Bitmain and MicroBTs, they have less than a 2% failure rate. It's 2% and 3% respectively with MicroBT and Bitmain. So a very low failure rate as compared to Bitmain's last release, the Antminer S17, which upon release had closer to a 30% failure rate based on some people's reports. So if you can imagine spending $1 million and basically 30% of the hardware that's shipped to you has to go back to China to be repaired. And it creates a big bottleneck for your business. It creates a lot of problems for the operational efficiency of your business. And it, of course, impacts your bottom line. Now, what we have seen as a way to circumvent the need to ship machines back to China is now there are licensed and authorized repair facilities popping up in North America to support these warranty machines that are being purchased by United States miners, so they don't have to take that long trip back to China to be fixed. And namely, now we've had Core Scientific that's made announcements of having a licensed repair shop. You have HM Tech, VMS Cloud. There are a number of companies that have popped up to make sure that they can service these growing North American mining contingencies and the hundreds of thousands of machines that they anticipate will be online here in the next couple of years. So we may now see the manufacturers in China try to move operations outside of China, potentially to the US. However, MicroBT has already set up a manufacturing facility in Thailand, and Bitmain has set up a manufacturing facility in Malaysia. So I do not foresee them looking to move operations over here. But as long as the operations stay in China, it does present certain import and export challenges. Shipping costs since July 15 are up almost 350%. And it's been something that everyone has felt is partially due to COVID, partially due to the lockdowns that are being experienced everywhere, but also it's just because of the increased demand. For us at Compass, when we're ordering on a daily basis, we notice these changes day to day because we're getting these these quotes for shipping regularly. And it's amazing to see how quickly things can change because of the market conditions. The thing with the ASICs, and especially with the secondary market, is when it comes to mining Bitcoin, and this is something that often gets overlooked, not only do you have a machine that is creating Bitcoin for you, but the machine itself is correlated to the price of Bitcoin. So if you buy an ASIC today for $5,000 and Bitcoin is at $30,000, and then Bitcoin goes to 60K, that ASIC is going to be worth $10,000. And you can sell that on the secondary market and realize that profit. And when we launched Compass, we were keen on checking the dynamic of how this worked, right? There's a different mentality when it comes to institutional buyers and retail buyers in the space. And one of our theses is that when retail gets involved in buying these ASICs, they are going to want to realize that profit on their machines. And as the secondary market develops more in the United States, our marketplace will be there to help more people sell through the hardware that they're getting. Right now, almost the entire secondary market is controlled by Asia. Basically what happens is the the manufacturers will release their batches of machines, and then your first tranche of those is going to go to the large buyers like the Galaxy Digitals or the Block Caps or the Argos or the Riots. These are the announcements that we see where people are buying tens of thousands of machines. And the other buyers that come in that second tranche are the distributors, these large distributors in China who basically are purchasing future orders so that they can sell spot and realize that price difference. Because you're able to buy future orders for generally between 30 and 50% less than what those machines are going to sell for on spot. So with us at Compass, we do source some machines from the manufacturers, but because of our daily turnover, the majority of the interactions and deals that we make when it comes to purchasing hardware is through these secondary distributors who are able to provide us advantageous spot pricing, and then also are able to ship right away. Because the one thing about it is when you're looking at retail versus institutional, what we have found is that institutional money and these bigger funds or bigger miners, they are okay with waiting to get machines if they can get a lower price. But when it comes to retail, they want to be online right now. So everything for us is about making sure that we can get people online as quickly as possible. So with the recent drop in Bitcoin price, we have also seen a drop in the hardware's price. However, after this last difficulty drop, which is, well, not this last one, I should say, but the prior difficulty drop of 27%, we saw a spike in the price of the ASICs as people were starting to, or as distributors were starting to upcharge for the machines because they now knew they were going to be operating more profitably. So in effect, if you had a Bitcoin ASIC plugged in after the last difficulty drop, your profitability was very similar to when you were mining when Bitcoin was close to 60K. So it was a very good time, and it still is a very good time to be mining Bitcoin. But because of this and because of the profitability, distributors are now increasing their prices per terahash for each of these machines to ensure that they can maximize their upside as well. The one thing with the secondary market now that is a phenomenon that we've never seen before in Bitcoin mining, and we may never see again, is this Chinese crackdown on mining. There is basically just a sweeping announcement that all Chinese miners needed to close down their operations, and it all needed to be done very quickly. So within the span of about 2 weeks, we saw almost 90% of China's hash rate come offline, and these machines be stored, or people were trying to move them out of China or sell them, which, because of the tailwind of Bitcoin's pump to 60K, moving these ASICs is almost impossible. It's very hard to take basically 2/3 of Bitcoin's network and 2/3 of Bitcoin's hash rate and try to relocate it at this time. So we are anticipating that this move to be completed is probably going to take 12 months or so. So some people are saying it can be done as early as 9 months. Some are saying as much as 18 months. We kind of fall in between because there is a ton of rack space that will come available in early 2022. But right now, this extended period of mining profitability is likely to continue because the ASICs just have nowhere to go. And while we may see some of these miners sell their ASICs, even if the ASICs sell to miners in the United States or in Europe or in South America, there's still not rack space. There's just not anywhere to plug these in. So it will take quite a long time, we think, for hash rate to rebound in a meaningful way, which makes it very exciting for everyone that is mining now, especially on a smaller scale. So the one advantage that people purchasing through retail have over the institutional clients is that institutions, they have to have massive facilities built in order to deploy everything that they need. They have, thousands of machines to get online. Whereas, if you have one machine to get online, it's fairly simple to carve out a megawatt or 2 megawatts from a lot of these facilities and to get, those 300 to 600 machines online for people who are interested in mining more of a retail level. So as a North American Bitcoin mining company, we are incredibly excited about the growth of hash rate in North America and what this means for the secondary market in worldwide. We really think that as more hash rate comes within our borders and goes to Canada, we are going to see a few great things occur. One is the energy mix that's going to be used by Bitcoin miners is going to become more carbon neutral and quote unquote green for the planet. I know that some people don't lump nuclear and natural gas into the green discussion. But I think that we're going to see more nuclear powered facilities come online, which ultimately is a great, clean, reliable source of energy for miners. And then, we're also going to see, I think, the pricing power for these ASICs move from China to the United States. So we'll either have the distributors in China start to sell direct to buyers here in the States, or in North America, I should say, or we will see new distributors popping up over here and taking that burden off of the Chinese distributors themselves. So we'll see how that will shake out over the next couple of months. And then the last thing that we're keeping an eye on, and there's always been talks of this, is that will there be chip production in the United States? Will this facility that TSMC is building in Arizona produce chips for Bitcoin mining? Or will all the supply go to Apple? And then the jury's still out. We're going to have to wait and see how that shapes up. But we would love, and we envision that at some point in the near future, there will be someone that takes a shot at manufacturing ASICs within North America, because the demand is here. We're seeing more and more purchasing power coming from the United States. We have more funds and family offices and institutions and big and small investors who want to get into mining than we have ever seen before. Just as an example, for us at Compass, between the Chinese exodus and now, retail sales have gone up almost 300%. And we're noticing that more than ever, people want to participate in mining, whether it's to secure the network, whether it's to generate Bitcoin, whether it's a combination of those. Now more than ever, people are understanding the importance of mining. They're understanding the importance of playing a part in the security of Bitcoin's network. And like I said, if you are bullish on Bitcoin, you have to be bullish on mining. There are so many people out there who have tens of thousands to millions of dollars invested in Bitcoin. And now they're understanding that in order to secure that part of their investment, running a miner or 2 or 10 is critical to allowing Bitcoin to thrive. So, I hope that this was informative in some way. But I thank you guys for, again, Amanda, allowing me to share. And yeah, appreciate it.
But that was great. Thank you so much. A lot of insight into the market and like what's happening now. I love that presentation. So thanks for coming. We will update everyone else this week on Twitter on our updated time for our Twitter Spaces. And Whit, I will see you tonight.
All right. See you tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.